The series of lunchtime conversations intends to capture insights from some of society's thought leaders in these times. It's the 20th of May, and here in the UK, there's still a lot of uncertainty, but a sense of beginning to end the lockdown and plans have been made for recovery. Part of my role at Warwick University is to make sure our education programmes remain relevant and continue to serve the needs of society. To do this, it's important to be part of the research and industry community. The people I'll speak to in this series form my professional network, and I rely on them to inform and help steer our educational offerings. We've seen seismic shifts in all areas of life. The extraordinarily pervasive nature of COVID-19 will have lasting effects. With me today to discuss, I have Don Henderson, who works for the Transport Coordination Unit with Highlands and Islands in Scotland, and also works with our students through the design classes that we offer. Don, welcome to lunch. You're based in Inverness in the Highlands of Scotland. Can you tell me a bit about the transport network in the north of Scotland?
Well, I'm based in the major hub of the Highlands, but we cover an area of 25,000 square kilometres, and most of that is rural areas with very small transport links, but essential transport links involving anything from a taxi, a minibus to a larger company. But in Inverness itself, there's a big contractors in here, but the links are essential due to amenities not being nearby. So hospitals, for instance, could be as far away as 100 miles away from people's.
So the scale of the place that your unit coordinates for, I mean, I've heard you say before, it's about the same size as the country of Belgium. Is that right?
I actually looked it up. It's slightly smaller, but yes.
Yeah. So I mean, from because I'm of course based down in England, and in England at that kind of scale, we tend, because the population is that much greater, we would tend to have many smaller regional units coordinating those kind of transport networks. But you're kind of coordinating that scale.
We have a team of 7 people that do school transport only, and 6 people that do public transport, community transport, and all the infrastructure, bus stops, timetable, and so forth, and for the whole area. Gosh,
so that's quite a lot. And when the pandemic hit, how coronavirus, how did that impact? Because obviously public transport at the moment is very much advised against unless you're key workers. How did that impact the communities in the north of Scotland?
The larger companies, the footfall went away almost overnight, so they reduced their services quite dramatically. This caused us a lot of work due to they have to always register when they are cancelling services. So there was a big a large amount of work to do in a very short time. But the smaller groups, they sort of almost got it amongst themselves to look after themselves a little bit easier. So if there was a rural village, for instance, the community transport group for that area would had already put plans in place to adapt by food deliveries or medicine deliveries, and so they are still sort of running, but not running with passengers. They are more running for errands, whereas the bigger companies sort of just lost their entire sort of clients overnight.
Was that, I mean, gosh, was that, I guess that was surprising, or did you foresee that the smaller communities would kind of be able to self-organize as effectively?
No, it makes sense that they did now in hindsight, but at the time, the thought process was that we would set up a central hub and we would dictate exactly what each small group would have to do and how best to run it. But by the time we had got that up and running, because it was a hub that involved everything to do with COVID-19, not just transport, all the little community groups and the dial buses and so forth had already started doing their own thing, and now we're just there to support in the best way we can.
Yeah, I guess that's quite a heartening story, really. I think about the strength of the communities in the rural areas. How does it feel now? Do you feel like that will sustain? And in Scotland, of course, you haven't had the stay-at-home message changed, but how does it feel now, planning forward?
It's a real worry going forward. The smaller groups should be okay because the link that they provide is essential, and they need to be there. The larger companies have got to really rethink their plans, because getting people back onto public transport, even though it's going to be something that's going forward, is probably a good thing. It's going to be difficult for people to social distance and so forth on the larger sort of companies' buses. The smaller ones, I suspect, are going to be okay, and probably have almost benefited in a way from this. There's the community spirit's increased in that areas.
And it's been quite widely reported, the kind of risks that bus drivers are in, and how did the decisions get made? Reflecting that it's difficult now to have that central unit that works it all out, and actually it's more about supporting smaller regional units as they find their own solutions. How do you now go through that decision-making process from advice from the government to actually implementing changes? So the idea of social distancing is something that will need to be in place. How does that decision-making process work from that very large-scale message that then translates into you actually modifying some of the buses or some of the transports and systems in different ways?
In Inverness, we are currently about to the council, along with a lot of other third-party groups, are currently going to change the whole network of transport in Inverness. So there'll be one-way systems, there'll be larger bike lanes, areas for people to walk, and this is going to cause its own problems, because now our infrastructure, bus shelters and bus stops are in the wrong place. So there's going to be a large thinking process that is going to have to work out how we best serve the community now, because everything's going to be wrong. Even though it's encouraging walking and cycling and public transport, it's not what was here yesterday, and it's going to be very, very different looking forward. And we have to make sure that these companies are still here when everything goes back to normal. That they haven't been a casualty of the whole COVID thing. So we have to make sure that there are actually buses to take children to school. There are buses to take people to hospital, and that's a challenge in itself.
Yeah. Yes, I imagine. Yeah, I imagine that in some of the implications it has, from designing a new system down to the detail of implementing, picking up a bus stop and putting it on the other side of the road. It all requires that detailed level of thinking it through as the good ideas are rolled out as to how we can improve things. I was going to ask you a question a little later on, but I think maybe I'll ask you now. The question came in from, I think it was Nino Pesic. I'm not sure if I've said her name correctly. I apologise if not. But her question was along the line of the green, the green agenda. And I know your own daughter is a campaigner for a greener world. So her question was specifically around, are you looking at different types of fueled buses? But I guess what you're touching on there is actually maybe broadening our understanding of what transport means, and looking at including pedestrians and cycle paths. How's that coordinated?
We are looking at different vehicles. We are slowly introducing electric vehicles into the communities through various different schemes, but the process takes quite a long time to go from idea to actually electric bus in the community. But the infrastructure side of things, trying to stay green is tricky. You know, Inverness is quite a compact city, and it's going to be hard to make people stop using their cars and use cycling. And maybe this is the moment where this happens. You know, this is the chance where the infrastructure can, which maybe take a long time to get and put in place, can maybe be done rapidly and benefit the green requirements and my daughters.
Good, I'm glad she's in charge. So part of the council oversees a large area and a large population, but you do cover an expansive area. Have you been given ideas about how you're going to go back to whatever the new normal is? Has the council coordinated that, or are you still in the position where you're kind of waiting to hear what's going to happen next? How's that? How's the internal communications handled?
It's a tricky one. The team that I work with, we are moving things forward as best we can, but there are so many factors at play that we have to take our time to make sure decisions are made. And you know, we are the council, so you know, a lot of our decisions are have to go through committee and make. And so there are lots of things that we need to wait and see. But the working from home sort of thing, that sort of, I have no idea if we're going to be here for months or
years. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So, and of course, you and I, we've worked together for several years, delivering the design courses at WMG. The service design experience that runs over the course of a week was intentionally designed around 2013, 2014, and we were intentional about designing that so that the experience could be run remotely. At the time when we developed that, we thought the students would like the flexibility, and that we could see that technology was giving us an opportunity to free us from the classroom walls and deliver things differently. So we were experimenting with that. And one of the things I noticed from that was that actually the students actually really enjoyed being in the classroom together and working face to face. So I mean, that's something for me to consider with our programs going forward. But that it gave us a flexibility in the way that we could deliver it. So you and I and others, we have led the delivery. I've led the delivery of the week in this week-long master's module in Hong Kong. And I've had my delivery team that you're part of in Scotland, England, and Cyprus on occasion. Generally, this teaching week is very well received by the students, and they love the facilitation. They love that exercise and having people involved, quizzing them, being grumpy customers, being radio hosts, being radio shows, all these things. They love all that. And why do you think it works so well as a learning experience?
It's a very good question. I think the idea of the world sort of becoming like this, you know, small place where I'm in Scotland and you're in Hong Kong, I think just benefits the student.
I guess that, I mean, maybe, but I can see that. I notice that it breaks when they come to the classroom, there's a mindset on the student that they expect the teacher to be the person that's standing at the front of the class. And when somebody real gets in touch with them online, that's based in another part of the world, that in itself breaks a kind of a structured way of thinking at assumptions that have been made. And if those assumptions can be challenged, then so could an awful lot else. Maybe that's one of the reasons it's effective to opening people up for learning new things. Maybe
it's definitely a different way of that I'm used to, and I feel the benefit that the students are getting. I can see it in the text and the conversations we have, how they seem to be more on their toes, more sort of alive and engaging in this sort of unusual way of doing of delivering the module from different parts of the world, and it works well. And I've also seen it, of course, while I've been in the same room as them, and the way the course works, I'm trying to think. Sorry, my words. There is a real sort of shift in the way that. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Sorry, Mairi.
Well, maybe, that brings me on to my next question. If you don't mind me asking,
Not at all.
you have been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis.
Yes.
When was that diagnosis made, and how did it impact you when you got that diagnosis?
Yeah, I was diagnosed about 4 years ago. I was actually down in Warwick University at the time when I started feeling ill, and it took a long time before the diagnosis came through, and the impact has been huge. And one of the things is I forget words and I forget my threads. So I apologize to anybody that's listening, because that is unfortunately one of my symptoms, and it can be stressful in the work environment, but people are kind.
And do you have techniques you employ, or is it a crisis every day?
I try to avoid things like this. No, it's a crisis. Yeah, it's tricky. You know, I have an understanding team around me that cut me some slack and give me time to think of the word, even if it ends up being the wrong one. So, yeah.
And I mean, I guess that having that diagnosis and living in this pandemic, has this coronavirus crisis, has it impacted you? Do you notice it impacting you differently, or are you kind of in the same boat with everybody, or does having MS compound or alleviate, or what? Do you notice anything differences?
I'm a lot more tired than I fatigue is a big part of my illness, and this has impacted a lot on that. It's made it worse, without a doubt. But everybody's in the same boat, and I'm sure everybody's suffering from tiredness and sitting around, not doing enough exercise. And I'm just as to blame as anybody else with that. But yeah, I am missing the sort of the stimulus as well of other colleagues, I think, just to keep me going. And usually a normal working week would be I work and then I sort of just put all the tiredness at the weekend and store it up for then. But now it's tiredness is sort of every day, so it's harder. Yes.
So when I guess when these kind of restrictions are eased a little bit, what are you most looking forward to?
It'd be nice to see my daughter back at school. That would be a nice thing. I would, personally, I'd like to. It'd be nice to see my colleagues again, and also, I think the most important thing and the first thing I'm going to do once I get out of here is go and visit the community groups that are scattered around the Highlands, who have done an amazing job, and go and thank them all, because that would be a large part of my job anyway, going around visiting them. Yeah, going around to see them and just saying thank you. Yeah.
That's great. Well, Don, thank you very much indeed for sharing these insights. For me, you know that they're enormously useful to help me inform my own practice and the education programs I design and deliver. For our current students, it gives a really valuable insight, and they can help inform their research. And for the wider Warwick community, it's just fascinating to learn about completely different industry and actually almost a completely different way of life than we have in the more urban environment. And anyone listening to this would like to hear more from Don, drop me a line and I'll forward it on. I'm on Warwick's website, and if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll just follow the link on the closing slide. This series will also be made available as a podcast, Just search Insights Over Lunch on your preferred listening platform. So thank you very much. Nothing more to be said, Don, apart from enjoy your lunch.